So, you decided to fly in the L-39. And before you can get some of this, there's a few things we need to discuss today. My name is Micah, and I'm one of the pilots here at the Forgotten Heroes Foundation. In this video, we will cover the things that are necessary for you to be safe, comfortable, and to have a good time in your flight today. So let's get after it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the seat, how to get in and out of the aircraft, some of the switches and displays in the back, and then we'll cover a few emergencies. L-39s are designed to be tactical jet trainers and originally came equipped with ejection seats. The Forgotten Heroes L-39, the American Patriot, has been modified for racing, and the ejection seats have been removed in order to reduce weight and to give it just a little bit more performance. To that end, the American Patriot is one of the fastest L-39s on the planet. Let's talk about the seats in this L-39. The seat has two major components. There's the gray and black frame here, and the integrated parachute and seat cushion assembly here. Now, as mentioned before, this gray and black part, the frame itself, was originally designed to accommodate ejection seat equipment, like the rockets and other levers and stuff associated with the ejection seat. Now, the integrated seat cushion and parachute assembly is connected to this gray and black frame in 4 locations. There's 2 on one on each shoulder, here and here, and then one on either side, which is connected and connects your lap. Now, in the event that you need to get out of the aircraft in an airborne emergency, you can disconnect yourself from the seat, but still stay attached to the parachute by actuating this red manual release handle. So you're going to pull that handle in and push it forward, and it's going to unlock each one of these locking points and allow you to get out of the aircraft with your parachute still on your back. Another connector, which is pretty important, especially in that particular case, is the static line connector, which is over here on the right side. It's you'll see this red lanyard, and it's connected to your seat. So when you come up to the seat, you want to look at all of those 4 connectors, those 5 connectors. The 2 shoulder, 2 lap, and 1 static line. Now, when you get into the aircraft, there's going to be a couple of ways for you to connect yourself to the integrated seat harness, which is then connected to the seat. The first 2 places are around your legs. That's what these 2 straps are. Then you're going to have your lap connector, which is right here. And then you'll have a chest connector, which goes here. This is how it will deploy a parachute once you've exited the aircraft airborne. So you'd reach over, you grab this D-ring, you pull it out as far as you can pull it, and then that will deploy the parachute from the back. Let's talk about some of the normal operations of the seat. Now, I mentioned that your shoulders are connected to this gray frame with these lanyards here. And these pretty much remain locked in a particular position when you're riding around all the time. But if you need to adjust yourself or lean forward for whatever reason to reach something, over on the left side of the seat, there is a handle. It's yellow with a yellow knob on it. You pull that inboard, you push that forward, and that will allow your harnesses, your shoulder harnesses, to kind of move forward. Once you get adjusted or whatever else, you bring that handle back, and it's spring loaded to go back to the outboard, and then you'll be locked again. Over on the left side of the seat, if you, for whatever reason, are sitting too low or sitting too high, there's a switch down on the left. You pick up, it will raise the seat, and push down, and you'll lower the seat. And then, of course, we've already talked about the manual release handle, which is over on the right. You won't operate the manual release handle at any time. You shouldn't need to ever touch it unless you're about to jump out of the aircraft airborne. Other than that, that's the seat. So let's talk about getting into the L39 in the back seat. On the left side of the plane, there's 3 steps and a handhold to assist you to get in. There's one that's pretty obvious, and then there's 2 concealed. In order to get in, you'll grab up with your left hand and take your first step up with your left, and then just follow up like this. Just step on the seat if you need it, otherwise step down on the bottom. Once you're in the aircraft, it's time to attach yourself to your harness and parachute. I like to put my shoulders in first and then attach the connectors from the legs, working my way back up to the chest. And then once you get them all attached, to tighten them down to your comfort and security. When it's time to close the canopy, only move it using the handle on the left rail while maintaining positive control. The L-39 was originally designed as a tandem-seated trainer aircraft, with the instructor in the back and the student in the front. Because of the intent for the instructor to fly from the back seat, there are certain switches and controls from the rear cockpit that will override those in the front cockpit. For this reason, the rear cockpit will be set up prior to ingress to minimize the need for you to adjust or move any of the switches or levers. The cockpit is configured in 3 panels: the left side panel, the right side panel, and the display panel. We will start in the back left corner on the left side panel and sweep through the cockpit. In the back left corner of the cockpit is a black knob labeled oxygen. This knob controls the oxygen supply shutoff valve and the flow of oxygen from the storage tanks to the respective seat. During pre-flight preparations, this valve will be verified open by the aircrew. Oxygen is regulated to the gray mass pictured here via the oxygen regulator. The regulator is controlled by the emergency oxygen switch pictured on the left with the red background, and the diluter demand switch with the black background pictured on the right. The diluter demand switch has 2 positions, 100% and normal. In the normal position, oxygen is supplied to the regulator depending on the cabin altitude as well as pilot's needs. In the 100% position, pure oxygen is delivered continuously. The emergency oxygen switch also has 2 positions, off and on. For normal operation, the switch is set to off. If there is increased difficulty in breathing through the mask, there is a possible demand regulator failure. To bypass the regulator, the emergency oxygen switch should be moved to on, and the oxygen will be delivered with positive pressure to the mask with no regulation. You most likely will be operating at altitudes at which oxygen is not required, and you will not use the mask unless there's a situation where the air in the cockpit is suspected to be contaminated with some type of smoke or fumes. In the case of contaminated cockpit air, you'll place the mask to your face and switch the diluter demand switch to 100%. Breathe normally and finish attaching the mask to your helmet. The next lever is the fuel shutoff lever. It controls the fuel shutoff valve. If this lever is actuated, it will cut off fuel to the engine and cause the engine to shut down. This lever will be and is to remain in the forward position and under the red guard. This is the throttle. It is one of the few levers in the rear cockpit that you'll be asked to manipulate. The button on the inside of the throttle controls radio transmissions, and the switch controls the speed brakes. There are several switches that control engine start and stop, as well as emergency fuel to the engine. These switches are protected with multicolored guards and can only be moved if the guards associated with them are lifted up. At no time will these switches be actuated from the rear cockpit, and all guards should be in the down position. This lever is the emergency and parking brake lever. It controls the emergency brake system, and in the rear cockpit will always be in the forward position with the safety wire. The last gauge on the left console to discuss is the oxygen supply gauge. With the oxygen supply valve turned on, this gauge should read between 30 and 150. While breathing through the oxygen mask, the flow indicator shown as the white flags in the bottom of the gauge will cycle between white and black. Moving to the right side panel, this is the air shower diffuser, also called the eyeball socket. This diffuser controls the direction of air-conditioned air into the cockpit and can be manipulated to direct airflow for comfort as well as aid in the clearing of fumes or smoke. Although this switch is labeled G5, it controls the power to the G3X on the display panel. It will be in the forward position for the duration of the flight. Next to the G5 switch is the seat power control switch. It allows power to be applied to the motor in the seat to facilitate raising and lowering the seat. This lever is the cockpit pressurization lever. It is interconnected with the forward cockpit, and you may see this lever move forward and aft as the front seat pilot manipulates it. This guarded switch is left over from when the aircraft had ejection seats. It is not currently used. However, the guard will remain down the entire flight. This button is a secondary push to talk button to allow radio transmissions from the rear cockpit. The switch controls power to one of the engine gauges in the rear cockpit and should be in the forward position the entire flight. This is the hydraulic pressure indicator gauge. It indicates hydraulic pressure for both the normal and emergency hydraulic systems. These 4 levers are associated with the emergency hydraulic system. All 4 levers shall be in the forward position and remain there the entire flight. At no point should any of these levers be manipulated. If it is discovered any of these levers have been inadvertently moved, you must immediately notify the pilot. In the back right corner of the cockpit on the right side panel are the communication plugs. This is where your helmet is connected so that you can hear and talk to your pilot, as well as hear the radio. The plugs are 2 different sizes. The larger plug can only be inserted in the larger hole. If at any time during the flight you experience a loss in hearing transmissions or the ability to talk to your pilot using the helmet mic, check that both plugs are inserted fully and in the correct hole. Moving to the display console. On the left side of the display console is the landing gear handle. The landing gear handle has 3 positions: up, down, and middle. As mentioned, some levers in the rear cockpit override those of the front cockpit. The landing gear handle is one of those levers. To ensure full front cockpit control, the landing gear handle in the rear cockpit will be in the middle position and will remain in the middle position the entire flight. This is the airspeed indicator. It indicates speed of the aircraft in nautical miles per hour. The altitude indicator indicates the altitude in feet based on barometric pressure. This is the engine cluster. The top dial indicates the speed at which the engine turbine is turning. The lower right indicates the amount of fuel on board the aircraft in hundreds of kilograms, and the lower left dial is called the triple gauge. It shows fuel flow, oil temperature, and oil pressure. Out of all the displays and indicators in the rear cockpit, the middle display, the G3X, will probably be the one that you find yourself wanting to look at the most. Power to the G3X is controlled by the G5 switch on the right side panel. The G3X is a modern display presenting digital readouts of flight and navigation information. There is quite a bit of information shown here. However, it all generally assists in answering 3 questions. Where are we? What are we doing? And where are we going? The artificial horizon provided by this display is shown by this horizontal white line. Generally, The display is blue above the line and represents the sky. Below the artificial horizon line, the display is generally brown and represents the ground. Blue above and brown below means the aircraft is generally right side up. However, during dynamic maneuvering, you may see brown above the horizon line and blue below the horizon as the aircraft goes through inverted attitudes. Airspeed in nautical miles per hour is indicated on the left side of the display with a digital readout shown here. On the right side of the display, altitude is indicated based on barometric pressure. Instantaneous flight path is given by the green flight path marker, sometimes referred to as the velocity vector. If the marker is above the yellow horizon line, the aircraft is currently climbing. If the marker is below the horizon line, the aircraft is in a descent. And if the marker is on the horizon line, as it's shown here, the aircraft is in level flight. The direction in which the aircraft is heading is shown in two locations: digitally at the top of the display and on the compass by the heading marker in the navigation window. So putting it all together, we see at a glance that this aircraft is in level flight, traveling 160 knots at 6,500 feet on a heading of 026. This L-39 is well maintained and is a safe aircraft, and the chances of an emergency have been reduced. However, in the event of an emergency, the guidance is generally the same no matter what the nature. Remain calm, listen up, and follow the directions of your pilot. Let's talk about emergency egress. To get out of the aircraft in an emergency, whether on the ground or in the air, the steps are generally the same. You're going to notify the crew. That means there's going to be a quick discussion between you and your pilot to confirm that you're actually going to get out of the aircraft. Next is to open the canopy. Next, disconnect the cords, and don't forget your mask if you're wearing the oxygen mask. On the ground, you're going to unstrap from your harness, and then finally you will egress the aircraft. For an emergency egress in the air, crew notification is achieved by repeating the phrase "bail out, bail out, bail out." At that point, you will unlock your canopy and open it. You will disconnect your cords and remove your oxygen mask if you're wearing it. You will actuate your manual release handle on the right side of your seat, disconnecting your harness from the seat, and then you will bail out of the aircraft. A bailout means that you will jump clear of the aircraft and pull your D-ring on your left shoulder and make a parachute descent to the ground. If at any time during the flight you suspect that the air in the cockpit is contaminated with either smoke or fumes, you will put your oxygen mask on and move the diluter switch to 100%. Finally, you can take the air shower, i.e. the eyeball, and turn it until it's closed, or simply just redirect the airflow away from your face. Although losing communication with your pilot is not a severe emergency, it can be a major distraction if not handled quickly. If during the flight you notice you're unable to hear communication from your pilot or from the radios, check your comm cords in the back right corner of the cockpit. If you're still unable to receive communications, notify your pilot using hand signals or talking loudly. Flying in the L-39 is a unique experience. In this video, we cover the items necessary for you to have a safe, comfortable, and enjoyable experience. And you are now ready to go have fun.